Hello, everyone. My name is Blair Meriden, and I'm the CrowdStrike Marketing Campaign Manager here at TD SYNNEX Public Sector. Welcome to the third webinar of our CrowdStrike product training mini-series. And if you haven't registered for our other sessions, please be sure to do so. We have a lot more in store for the remainder of the year, from cloud security, Falcon exposure management, and Falcon Insight XDR, to name a few. But for today's training session, we'll be talking about cloud security. And as always, this training is brought to you by TD SYNNEX Public Sector, an authorized CrowdStrike distributor and the premier government solutions aggregator, solving IT challenges for the federal, state, local, and health markets. Before we get started, let's go over a few housekeeping items. Your lines are muted for the duration of the training series. However, if you have questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to drop any questions in the Q&A or chat field. This session will be recorded and can be accessed later through the same area where you registered for the training. So if you missed the previous session, no worries, just go to the session listing and you can watch the recorded sessions there. Also be on the lookout for a quick survey before we conclude. We'd really appreciate your feedback so we can adjust accordingly for any future training sessions. And if you have any technical questions, please message Felicia directly in the chat. And before we begin, here's a brief introduction for today's subject matter expert from CrowdStrike. Peter Fabianski. Peter is a solutions architect at CrowdStrike specializing in the public sector. And with over 5 years of hands-on experience, Peter is a mastermind in networking engineering, system administration, and IT solutions. And if you haven't sat in on one of his webinars, you're in for a treat today. Peter is a wealth of knowledge and inspiration in endpoint security, identity security, and threat intelligence spaces. So without further ado, take it away, Peter.
Awesome. Thanks, Blair. Hi, everyone. As Blair said, we're going to cover some things around Falcon Cloud Security. So let me go ahead and share up my screen here, and we should be good to go here. So we're going to cover a couple of different topics today. First and foremost, if you haven't seen, Falcon or CrowdStrike's, kind of cloud security offering, there's a lot of different components that kind of make it up. There's a lot of different nomenclatures and terms that are used with different cloud security products out there. But the one that you'll see that I'll reference kind of Falcon Cloud Security as when I talk about it is CNAPP, Cloud Native Application Protection Platform. That's kind of like your cumulative, kind of soup to nuts, kind of cloud protection platform that can kind of be used to, cover that term all encompassing. The way I see it is you have different things like CSPM, CIEM, CWP, ASPM, and even DSPM as well. Those all kind of make up, what goes into a CNAPP. So I always like to try and get that, verbiage, correct, before we dive into anything else, just so people kind of understand it. But as we go ahead and move through out here, before we, go ahead and actually get into Falcon Cloud Security, I always like to start with the problem. And the problem is adversaries. And that's why our, portfolio at CrowdStrike has been growing over the past decade. Adversaries have gotten smarter. They are better funded. They are, moving a lot faster. We're actually seeing e-criminal actors averaging from last year's global threat report to 62 minutes to get in and out, which is pretty wild. Because if you look at the various tactics and techniques, even over the past 1 or 2 years, that number has dropped significantly. But of course, adversaries are always looking for a way to get smarter, to get faster. And one of the biggest ways that they've really covered and achieved this is by leveraging cloud infrastructure and cloud kind of systems from customers that own them. So what they'll do is they'll hop in and they'll get some type of initial access, typically from some type of legitimate credentials or from some type of 0 day. And from there, they can laterally move. And if they find cloud infrastructure they can actually leverage, they can literally move from on-prem to cloud, start spinning up, EC2 instances, building out, various Lambda functions, and having that persistence stay within the cloud, as well as just spinning up their C2 domains and other toolkits in the customer's cloud and have them foot the bill while they're stealing whatever they're after. So we've seen this actually happen and increase over 110% year over year. And we're seeing 84% of these adversary attributed cloud conscious intrusions were focused on e-crime. So they're, kind of monetarily focused. And again, 75%, increase year over year on the leveraging of, cloud environment, intrusions. So it's a big problem. Again, if you're following any of our adversaries, Scatter Spider is a huge one. Um, it's pretty cool to see that we're doing such a good job of tracking these adversaries. I don't have the link handy, but I saw that someone actually I think they got arrested in Spain or Canada, that they were supposed to be part of the Scattered Spider syndicate. So I thought that was pretty cool that the media is even using our naming conventions. But enough on that. Let's keep going. Again, for this cloud conscious cases, we're seeing this, 75% increase. And we can go ahead and see that, these actors, are aware that they gain access to a victim-owned cloud environment, and they could use their access to basically abuse their own cloud service. I kind of talked about that on that previous slide. We're also seeing cloud agnostic cases where they weren't aware that they had compromised a cloud environment and they didn't take advantage of it. So you're seeing this increase, but this kind of just shows you overall that the popularity of cloud conscious threat actors is growing, pretty significantly. Again, if you're not familiar with CrowdStrike, we've been around for a little over a decade, really helping our customers stop data breaches. And there's a number of different ways that we really do that. We kind of hang our hat on our threat intelligence and our people, if I had to pick two things. And this slide is really showing you kind of how we're, paving forward a, significantly different, path, that's encapsulated with that intelligence, that first and third party data. We're leveraging AI to be able to, train AI like Charlotte and other places, but also, kind of pairing that with the people, our incident responders, threat hunters, analysts, and data scientists. If you don't know anything about Falcon Overwatch or Falcon Complete, those are our managed detection and response teams. For highlighting Falcon Complete, and Falcon Overwatch is kind of our set of threat actors that can kind of follow the sun and put together that low level telemetry for you. So if that's something you're interested, you can definitely contact DLT or TD6 public sector or myself, and we're happy to give you some more some more information there. Again, this is kind of the full cumulative platform. Cloud security is definitely a huge part of it. Since threat actors keep getting smarter, we have to keep building out new technology and ensure that we are protecting our customers and helping them stay ahead of these adversaries. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's move on to cloud security. So again, we have a CNAPP platform. We've been building and really putting a lot of efforts and putting significant investments into this because of the fact that these threat actors are spinning cycles in, and we're really focusing on making sure that we're giving you that complete view. When you look at CNAPP, I'd say the biggest things that you're seeing different vendors out there talk about is number one, CSPM, cloud security posture management, and then also CWP, cloud workload protections. So you may see those get referred to as CNAPP, but really to have that kind of full cumulative protection, you really need that combination of cloud workload protection and CSPM from an agentless perspective to make sure that your actual workloads and your applications are getting protected while they're actually running, but making sure that we're not having any other issues, on the control plane or the misconfiguration side. Again, one thing that I always like to highlight is we also have our people that back our product here as well with our 24/7 MDR, threat hunting, incident response, etc. Now, this is where we can go ahead and really leverage, CNAPP, holistically here, where we have the CSPM, our CIEM for our compliance perspective, ASPM, and CWP. Now, for CSPM, Cloud Security Posture Management, if you haven't heard me say that yet, this is really where we're going to go ahead and be able to plug in across multiple cloud environments to give you this level of visibility. And we're going to look for different IOMs or indicators of misconfigurations. If you aren't familiar with that is, that's really focusing around, if you're unfamiliar with like how AWS, works and how like their, S3 or their Lambda rules or their permissions are set up. It's very easy to get confused very quickly. The same is true for both Google Cloud and Azure. And it happens a lot more often than you think. Sometimes it's intentional too. I mean, if you're familiar with how DevSecOps, kind of perform their rapid, A/B testing and then ship new lines of code or new versions of software, they may just be going ahead and testing something real quick, and they're like, well, I know I'm going to change this, so I'll just go ahead and ship it, as is, just to test it, and size down the configurations later or the permissions later, and then something else comes up, and that developer forgets about it, and they forget to actually go size those particular credentials down that are running those services. So that's definitely a huge point of value that we work on. Again, being able to have this data in a singular, kind of pane of glass is really helpful to your SOC. Again, working across a bunch of different alerts and low fidelity, actions and detections to then try and accumulate it together. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. It is really difficult to do. So we're trying to put all that data together and have it be as high fidelity as possible and make sure that we're, putting together, like I said, that kind of complete CNAPP picture. So you're not jumping across multiple consoles or multiple panes of glass. This is kind of what like our cloud indicators of attack look like. So we'll go ahead and be able to pick up on, in this case, this is like an IAM login profile modification, but you can see all the different data, attack types, the accounts, the usernames, the IP addresses, if MFA was authenticated or not, and you'll get all of the cumulative information here in a timeline-like view. So if you're familiar with CrowdStrike, awesome. If you're not, like this is how our regular detections look, and this is how we're able to take this and kind of pack it back, across, the MITRE ATT&CK, kind of framework, which selfless, shameless plug. If you haven't looked at the MITRE Ingenuity reports, I believe a new one just came out, and we were actually ranked, pretty high, I think with the lowest detection rate of 4 minutes. So check that out if you haven't already read that report. Now, with CIEM, that stands for Cloud Infrastructure and Title Management. This is really focused around kind of validating that you're saying or doing what you're saying, from a compliance standpoint. So again, just like anything else, compliance is validating that you're kind of, running your systems a very specific way to make sure that you have MFA enabled, that you're only escalating privileges when you need to, that you don't have, super sloppy, IAM policies, etc. So what we do here is we have the ability to pull all this data together with AWS identities. And we have the ability to make sure that these accounts, in addition, the Azure Entra ID users and groups are set up appropriately. If you have someone that's maliciously or unintentionally building out a group that, doesn't sound like an admin group, but they're pretty much giving them God mode privileges, short of a few little roles. That's also something that you may want to know about. Again, could be an internal employee. It could be someone that thinks they're doing it for a legitimate use. It could be someone that is doing it from an adversarial perspective. Again, good adversaries live off the land and they can be pretty silent in some cases. So this is where we're going ahead and making sure that we're checking those identities, we're checking the policies, and we're giving you these tools to be able to go through and actually see them. Now, the identity analyzer. This is where we can go ahead and actually grab all these various data points for both Google Cloud IAM, Microsoft Entra or Azure ID, depending on which camp you live in for the naming convention, and then AWS IAM or Identity and Access Management. So what we can go ahead and do is we can collect user details, group details, roles, and response policies, pretty much for both. Google Cloud should have the same capabilities as well. I don't know why I don't have that on this slide, but that's really what we're collecting. And this is all done via API. So this is kind of like some of the agentless stuff that we're doing with CSPM and CIEM. Again, these are the identity policies that you can kind of see. So if you're looking at a identity and you're looking at a particular detection, again, we don't have a button that goes and just magically fixes this for you. What we're doing is we're giving you the information, letting you know that there's issues, showing you which accounts they are, and then giving you prescriptive remediation steps. Again, if you're on the customer side, or on the partner side for that matter, this is where you can be able to wrap, kind of remediation services around CrowdStrike when you're talking to your customers to be able to go ahead and be able to say, hey, by the way, like you have these issues, like, do we want to fix them? And I'd say, oh, 99% of the time, the answer is yes. They're like, yes, I do want to fix that giant hole in my network or a hole in my cloud infrastructure for that matter. So the cool thing with this is the identity policies. We can go ahead and actually do custom policy previews and be able to see these different values. So not only are you getting detections and alerts, but you can go ahead and kind of hunt against them too. Now, this is where we have the information with cloud actually getting integrated into the overarching Falcon platform. Like I mentioned, we want to make sure that you're looking at this data from a holistic view. And again, I believe we have this, kind of set up within our exposure management piece. So you can go ahead and see what your risks are from the cloud, from your outside view looking in and inside view looking out. But we're taking this a step further as well with our next gen SIM platform as well. So we have data that's going to be flowing from third parties, obviously, but we also have the data that we're collecting from the endpoint, identity, and cloud that we're being able to serve up. Now with Kubernetes and CWP, this is kind of more of this actual runtime. So if you're not super familiar with how data and how applications are built, 20 years ago, it was, hey, let's plan out the problem and what we want our application to do, and let's write everything in pseudocode, and we can go ahead and kind of achieve this with kind of like the waterfall approach, then start, coding the entire thing and being able to go ahead and put it all together, fix the bugs, do some type of QA, and then we'll ship it, and then we'll start working on the additional versions if we see critical issues. That's not really how cloud is developed anymore. DevSecOps or development security operations, it's done in a more kind of segmented approach for the better, because with running microservices and having everything be its own little thing, you can effectively control your application. You can code it more effectively, and you can efficiently build out applications in a lot quicker or a lot less time. So if you think about you're running a website, for example, maybe you have one little widget or one little microservice that's just running like the search function for your website. So if you wanted to go upgrade that website search function, you just take that little microservice, you can work on it, you can ship new code, and you can do some different types of testing. But the thing is, from a either intentional or unintentional or an adversarial perspective, how do you make sure that no one's poisoning your code or putting something bad in there to leverage the permissions that microservice has to not interact in a dangerous way with the rest of your website or your application? So that's really where this CWP container and Kubernetes security comes into play to be able to cover all these different items. So again, kind of on the back half, we have, industry register assessments like infrastructure as code scanning. Again, let's scan the code before it ships. Let's look at the admission controller policies again. The control plane for Kubernetes. Let's make sure that's actually configured appropriately and not overprivileged, or we're not doing anything, kind of fishy there. When you start getting on the actual release, deploy, operation, and monitoring view, this is where we can go ahead and actually get visibility into the actual Kubernetes pods. We can go ahead and actually have real runtime protection that's specifically built out for the cloud. We can actually go ahead and take all this data and proactively put it together, saying, hey, a threat actor could potentially jump, and use these various items within your cloud network to launch an attack. This is how you should kind of approach it in terms of remediation. And of course, ASPM, application security posture management. So if you're doing your own code development or application development for that matter, let's make sure your applications are actually secure and make sure that they're doing what they want, that you want them to do. But more on that later. So this is really where we can go ahead and kind of focus on that kind of shift left build out where we can go ahead and cover the image security and the CI/CD integration and be able to cover, the image scanning as well. Again, this is where your developers, doing, their image scanning, and we want to go ahead to make sure that, we can go ahead and check before they're shipping that stuff and doing those assessments that nothing is actually, fishy or nothing is, malicious, from that point, from a configuration point. Now, when you go onto the right-hand side, like I was talking, with CI/CD ship kind of release deploy section, it's like, okay, let's connect to the registry. Let's scan those registries. Let's go ahead and make sure that we're looking at the assessment policies. And, from a Kubernetes perspective, let's make sure that we're looking for those indicators of misconfiguration. We're looking for, various container drift, as well as making sure that, everything's kind of staying secure. And we're giving you all of that data here in kind of a singular way. And of course, we also have the actual CWP, like the cloud workloads that need protection as well. So these are the various containers that we can actually deploy out various sensors to. So it's kind of like our cloud EDR. This is where we can go ahead and be able to have that, EPP and next-gen AV, that all of our customers know and love to make sure that these cloud breaches are, stopping before they occur. So what we did with CWP for Kubernetes and containers is just make sure that it's set up and correctly configured for all of these different Falcon managed containers and different distros where you could be running your own virtual machines, or you may just be running various containers as well. This is where the deployment model kind of come in here. So if you want the Linux sensor to actually be running on the actual operating sensor, or if you want to be able to deploy it kind of adjacent to the actual pods or containers, you have the ability to do both. With the Falcon containers, this is where we can go ahead and deploy the Falcon container adjacent to all the other containers and basically just have like a little stub that's set up here that can, filter out the events and policies. So again, we're not affecting any workload issues and everything's kind of running in a succinct way. All right, ASPM. So we went ahead and actually acquired a company called Bionic a little over a year ago to really fill this huge gap that we were seeing in the market. As I was talking about it, if you think about this from a apps perspective, you can kind of see the various applications that are running on top of all of your different stack, from your hardware, your network, and your operating system. If you think about everything that we just covered, we're covering everything, but then the app is just kind of a black hole. It's like, okay, how do we know that application is actually correctly set up? And this is kind of where Bionic or Falcon ASPM fits. This is where we can go ahead and be able to look at other things like microservices, making sure that data is flowing the correct ways, making sure that those microservices are working in a way that they should be. And this is why we went ahead and actually acquired this organization and paired it with Falcon Cloud Security. So it's part of that, kind of comprehensive offering that you can power and protect the cloud with. It kind of works in three different ways. We can go ahead and map all of your application dependencies. That includes like services, APIs, frameworks, cloud providers, zones, things of that nature to see how they're all interconnected and work together and what permissions you need. We can actually then visually contextualize it all in this giant graph and then be able to score both business and security risk to be able to show how you should prioritize this. Same thing with kind of like attack path visualization. We can go ahead and say, hey, like if you have an internet facing, PCI microservice that has access to a bunch of this stuff, like your PII payments, PCI sitting in a database, like we might want to start there. Again, it's the same kind of ideology when you're thinking about patch management. Hey, you probably have a bunch of, CVSS scored 10 out of 10, but it's like, which one do you start with? It's like, okay, maybe we start with the one that's, attacking SLED that's being actively leveraged by an adversary, just as a quick example. Again, this is where we can go ahead and enable DevSecOps from an ASPM perspective. So we can go ahead and, like I said, be able to ensure that the developers are being efficient and, we're not slowing them down. We're making sure that data is actually getting plugged in a correct, way to ensure that we're seeing different services not getting underprivileged or not sending data to where they have to go to. Again, say you're leveraging an NFR or a dev environment database, and then you fire up prod, and then you accidentally, misconfigure test database to go to production, and now you're writing enterprise production data into your test environment, and then you delete it, and now you're no longer in compliance. Like that's a super straightforward use case that definitely can be solved with this platform. And again, from an operations perspective, this is where we're going to go ahead and be able to reduce outages and lower that mean time to respond. Again, this is kind of like this application snapshot in, kind of 5 steps. This is where we can go ahead and if we were talking to a customer, we could go ahead, deploy it, choose a POV application, be able to look at the various pack, collect that data, do continuous value discovery, and then kind of wrap it up and show like the findings. Now, the cloud security challenge, this is something that we actually have that we can offer to our customers. Again, it's kind of POV adjacent, as I like to call it. This is where we can go ahead and be able to effectively deploy out either from an agentless or an agent-based perspective and show the customer value of Falcon Cloud Security. How we do that is from an infrastructure standpoint, we basically can do like the identification of risky misconfigurations and vulnerabilities within their infrastructure, show them control plane threats, and identify compliance issues, all just via API. So this doesn't require any type of agents. So we basically take all that, wrap it up with a bow, and meet with the customer and be able to show them all that information. So this has been a really good tool for our sales engineers at CrowdStrike and our partner community, because if you're trying to help someone and they are, just kind of like, well, I don't want to talk about that. I think I have cloud covered. This is a great way to be like, hey, like, are you confident that your cloud's covered? And I'd say, 9 times out of 10, people will go ahead and say, no, I'm not. And if they say yes, yeah, I'm super confident. Like, hey, let's validate that yes for you. Just make sure that everything's covered. It's the same with the agent based. This is again where we can go ahead and kind of get a little deeper and be able to identify risky applications, identify threats that may be active, and look at actual threats in the runtime. But again, I'd say not every customer may have the same type of testing criteria, so that's why we offer both of them. And these are, the different types of packages that we actually have. So again, if someone's looking for, a shift left or simple packaging, or they're looking to cover just, Kubernetes or containers, we can go ahead and kind of build this out, for them specifically with these different packages. So that's all I have for you guys in a nutshell. Again, as I mentioned, I'm Peter Fabianski, kind of working here over at CrowdStrike, on the public sector side. And thank you for coming and kind of attending this webinar around cloud security. Again, if there are any questions, we'll go ahead and take a look at the chat and just make sure that we have everything covered for you guys. But if there isn't, feel free to follow up with any if any pop into your head later on.
Thanks, Peter. Appreciate that. Again, this is Caleb over here at DLT. I'm the Senior Sales Manager. So appreciate everyone jumping on and taking the time to be part of the call today. Appreciate Peter taking the time out of his day to go over this. This is great information. You guys will get a link to the information that we covered today, as well as the recording, so you can share with your teams. But if you guys have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to our team at CrowdStrike@dlt.com for all your sales-related questions, like always. Or if you have any related questions around the coverage that we went over today or the slides that we went over today, please let us know so we can get more in depth or have one-off conversations or trainings if your team thinks that'd be beneficial to them. One thing I also wanted to mention is our next session will be coming up, and it'll be around exposure management. And that's going to be August 8th at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So if you haven't signed up, please do so. Our team will be in contact with you to remind you of those. You also get those emails, so please sign up or register at dlt.com/CrowdStrike for not only the next, but the next few sessions that we have coming up. Got these running the rest of the year. And as always, please take a moment to complete our post-webinar survey so we can understand how we can get better with these as time goes on. With that being said, thank you again, and I'll turn it over to Blair.
Great. Thanks, Caleb. Peter, it looks like we do have a few questions here. So the first question, what cloud providers does Falcon Cloud Security support?
Yeah, great question. We actually support a myriad of clouds, as I mentioned earlier. We support AWS, Google Cloud, as well as Microsoft Azure or Entra, depending on your thought on there.
Great. And our next question, how should I be protecting my workloads? And do I use the same sensors as a traditional workstation or server?
Yeah, great question. We've definitely seen customers push out the traditional Falcon sensor onto workloads and containers. And while you can definitely do that, it's not going to give you optimal protection and give you full visibility into your cloud environment because there's different moving parts. We recommend, again, like for your various containers that you have operating system level kind of access to, we can deploy out our various different cloud sensors too, depending on the distro of Linux or the AMI package. If you're running in like EC2 or AWS or similar, if it's something that we can agentlessly plug into, that's again another great way where we can deploy into that, or again leverage like our Kubernetes pods, to be able to kind of collect those events, from that kind of Falcon stuff. But short answer is yeah, I would definitely leverage the native cloud sensors to be able to get optimal protection.
Perfect. And it looks like our last question here, what is the best place to start on protecting my cloud environment?
Yeah, but great question. I think that's really where a lot of people struggle with different security projects, especially cloud, not where everyone's super familiar with it. I would definitely recommend kind of starting with one of those risk reviews if you don't know where to start, because they're free, complimentary, and it'll definitely give you a bunch of information so you can kind of get a better understanding of your cloud environment. If you have a specific cloud environment, like maybe it's your fraud, maybe it's your your development environment, that's also another good spot to start, depending on if you have specific requirements or compliance, or maybe your customer failed a recent audit or something like that. These are all great kind of precursors to kind of define scope to kind of figure out where you should start.
Great. Okay, well, it looks like that's all the questions that we've had come up for right now. So again, if you have other questions that come up after the session, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team. Thank you again, Peter, for joining us today, and thank you all for attending our session on cloud security, and we hope to see you for our next one on August 8th. Thank you.